Okay, so this is the conclusion video to this testimony playlist. I believe this is video number 30. I anticipated my testimony would be about this long, and I didn't even include everything. I was really trying to just center in on the focus of overcoming sin and maturing in Jesus. Now, just a really quick recap of what I've gone through in general in this testimony. I talked about how I started off when I was really young, learning about Jesus and also learning from Jesus, not even knowing it was Jesus teaching me certain things, and how I ended up getting bound into sin at age 9. That continued for some time, and I just continued in sin, and it got worse and worse throughout the years. And finally, as an adult, Jesus delivered me from pornography, and I started going to church. I then got born again. However, shortly after my full-out experience in being baptized in the Holy Spirit and receiving the gift of the Holy Spirit and speaking in tongues and so on, about 2 weeks later, I fell right back into bondage again, and I was in it for a good 3.5 years. And then finally, Jesus came to me again, delivered me again, and this time I actually received his instruction and learned how to maintain overcoming the temptations. And that was, well, about a 4-year processing. And during that time, Jesus also started revealing to me how church just is not the way. And he started revealing to me the golden calves, both in church and outside of church, with believers that were just putting their confidence in teachings that they held to. Very few were actually learning from Jesus and learning how to overcome sin and learning the truth and learning the new way of living. Through teaching me all these things, and as I was being led by him, he eventually had me drop everything and live by faith, where I just trust in him. And eventually he led me to rest from all my works and my ways, and even my ways of thinking. He had me take on the heavenly perspective and put aside the earthly way. And this didn't happen overnight, as you could tell, because it took about 30 videos to go through a lot of this. And currently, as I testified already in my testimony, I'm working on attitudes and learning how to not make mistakes. So that's a really quick recap of what the past 30 videos have been on, without all the details. And this is my testimony on how I learned how to stop sinning, and that's in word and in thought and in deed, as well as learning how to be set apart in this world, learning the culture of heaven, coming out of the culture of this world, and beginning to live the way that Jesus desires for us to live here in this earth, set apart and representatives of him and his kingdom. And I again say all this just to encourage anyone out there who's struggling with sin, especially if you're struggling with lust. It really is not as bad as this spirit tries to make itself seem. You can overcome through Jesus. It is actually more afraid of you than you are intimidated by the thought of it. And I encourage everyone to really just trust Jesus. You can learn from him. He will teach you things. Really sit down and be teachable. And again, I encourage everyone to be willing to put things back in the fire. Just don't just sit down on a revelation and think, okay, I have the whole thing, I'm good to go. That's actually what is the big issue with most Christians, is because Jesus is the truth and they believe in him, they think they have the full truth and they're good to go. And that's not how it works. The lifestyle of a Christian is to follow the truth, and the Holy Spirit guides us into truth. So we should be willing to be taught no matter what, even if we think we know. Now, there's 2 other testimonies I would like to share. I know that I'm supposed to, and that's only because I've been praying about it and I did get the go-ahead. However, at the same time, I'm still asking Jesus how they're supposed to be shaped and whatnot. I was hoping that they could have been part of this testimony, but I'm beginning to realize, as I've been going over it and praying about it, that it doesn't exactly fit the direct subject matter and tone of how this testimony playlist has shaped out. So these next 2 testimonies that I would like to share at some point on this channel, I'm most likely going to be putting them in a separate playlist. They'll probably be by themselves, and that will most likely be closer to the end. With that being said, if you were watching these testimonies in order, you're at full liberty now to go through the rest of the playlists on this channel. if you haven't watched the How to Stop Sinning Through Grace playlist yet, that would be the next best place to start before watching any of the other videos, especially if you need some right now answers regarding overcoming sin. If you've already watched that playlist, then by all means you are free to go. I do recommend going in order, but you know what? That may not work with people. Jesus might lead you to do otherwise. You have the freedom to do so. I just ask and suggest it. As I mentioned in the introduction, the next playlists that come up are more like pointing the finger and exposing things that are wrong and saying, hey, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And the following playlist, the last few playlists of my channel, which pretty much start from sin and the law, those playlists are a little bit more edifying in giving answers and helping build up Christians and building up the brethren in the truth, in overcoming and being perfect, and giving a little bit more doctrinal advice / scriptures to support that we can overcome sin, we can overcome the world, and we can live the way that the scriptures do literally say. Also, some of those playlists are going to have a lot of extra information on just shaping together a lot of things that Christians do not entirely understand, or we kind of know but we don't know. You read it in the Bible, but yet it doesn't really make sense, such as, the difference between the Old Covenant, the New Covenant, and things like these, which can really help put a lot of things into perspective and also help us understand a little bit more about our identity as children of God, as well as followers of Jesus, and who the church actually is. Understanding these things can really, really, really help click some things and ways of thinking into place that can help us live in a deeper level of victory and a richer relationship with Jesus than following the traditions that we've been taught and the golden calves that we were taught to worship. Anyway, with all that being said, I'm going to end this video and this playlist here. Jesus bless you all, and thank you for listening to my testimony.